before video games, before smartphones, before weekends disappeared into work and routine, there were places that felt magical. Places where summer smelled like popcorn, where laughter echoed off wooden roller coasters, and where every family trip felt like the best day of the year. Across Canada, from coast to coast, we once had theme parks and attractions that lit up our childhoods. Some were small, some were spectacular, and some were so iconic, we still remember the sound of the rides, the colors of the signs, and the excitement in our stomachs as soon as we walked through the gates. But time moved on, the lights dimmed, the crowds faded, and one by one, these parks closed their doors forever. Today, many sit abandoned, demolished, or remembered only in photographs and fading family memories. In this episode of Classical Canada, we're going back to those forgotten places, the theme parks and attractions that once defined Canadian summers, but have now disappeared into history. So sit back, relax. Crystal Beach Amusement Park. Crystal Beach wasn't just a theme park, it was a summer tradition. For more than a century, families crossed the border, packed the ferries, and spent long, warm days on its shores. Its wooden roller coaster, the Cyclone, was so intense that riders came off shaking, and sometimes bragging. The boardwalk smelled like fries, saltwater taffy, and summer itself. But in 1989, after 101 years, the gates closed forever. Today, condos sit where laughter once filled the air, and Crystal Beach lives on only in the memories of those lucky enough to ride its magic. Maple Leaf Village, Niagara Falls. If you visited Niagara Falls in the 80s, you remember the giant Ferris wheel towering over everything. That was Maple Leaf Village, half mall, half theme park, easily one of the most colorful, loud, and chaotic corners of Canada. There were arcades, haunted houses, spinning rides, and that massive wheel you could see from across the city. It was touristy, messy, and absolutely unforgettable. By the early 90s, the crowds faded, the rides shut down, and Maple Leaf Village became just another chapter of Niagara's past. Rainbow Country attractions. Long before big-budget attractions, there were small, heartwarming spots like Rainbow Country on Manitoulin Island, made famous by the TV show Adventures in Rainbow Country. Families came to tour the filming locations, visit the tiny attractions built around the series, and enjoy the quiet charm of Northern Ontario. There were simple rides, local food stands, and a feeling of pure Canadian childhood. Today, almost nothing remains, but to those who visited, it still feels like a hidden treasure from another time. Expo 86 attractions. Expo 86 wasn't just an event, it was a moment when Vancouver felt like the center of the world. Monorails zipped overhead, futuristic pavilions filled the waterfront, and kids stood wide-eyed at robots, holograms, and attractions that looked like they belonged in the year 3000. For a single summer, it felt like the future had arrived in Canada. When Expo closed, many structures were dismantled, sold, or abandoned. A few survive today, but most live only in old photos, reminders of a time when the world came to Vancouver. Canada's Wonderland early attractions. Wonderland is still alive, but so many of its most beloved early rides are not. The Derby Racer, the Sky Rider, the giant Hanna-Barbera land characters, the Jumbo Jet, and the original Smurf Village. These were the childhood icons of the park's earliest visitors. Families still remember waiting for the monorail, eating ice cream by medieval fair, and watching shows under the hot summer sun. Many of those attractions are gone now, replaced, redesigned, or demolished. But to anyone who grew up in the 80s and 90s, they were Wonderland at its best. Flintstones, Bedrock City. There was a time when you could walk straight into the Stone Age, right here in Canada. Flintstones' Bedrock City in British Columbia was a childhood dream. Life-size dinosaurs, stone houses, cartoon cars, and costume characters that made you feel like you were living in the TV show. Kids climbed through dinosaur caves, posed in Fred's living room, and slid down giant stone slides that felt like pure magic. But as the years passed, the crowds thinned and the park slowly faded away until it finally closed in 2014. Today, Bedrock City survives only in old photos, but to those who visited, it was the closest thing to stepping into a cartoon. Wild Rapids Waterslide Park. Every summer in Alberta had one destination, Wild Rapids, the waterslide park that turned Sylvan Lake into a tourist hotspot. It had twisting slides, fast drops, warm patios, and that perfect mix of fear and fun as kids climbed the long stairs with tubes bigger than they were. For over 30 years, families returned again and again, building memories under the sun and spray. But in 2016, the slide shut down for good, leaving behind an empty hill where laughter once echoed all summer long. For many Albertans, Wild Rapids wasn't just a park, it was their childhood. Storyland, hidden among the forests near Renfrew, was a place called Storyland. A charming, gentle theme park where fairy tales came to life. Kids wandered through giant storybook scenes, sat with Humpty Dumpty, climbed into Cinderella's pumpkin, and explored whimsical cottages tucked beneath the trees. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't high-tech, it was warm, imaginative, and wonderfully simple. For decades, families visited for slow, happy days surrounded by childhood magic. When Storyland closed in 2011, it left behind abandoned statues and quiet paths, reminders of a kinder era of childhood wonder. Heritage USA Saskatoon's Kinsman Park Classic Rides. Kinsman Park in Saskatoon was once home to tiny but beloved amusement rides. The classic Ferris wheel, the miniature train, and the iconic carousel that spun for generations of families. Parents who rode it in the 60s brought their kids in the 90s, and those kids grew up remembering the bright colors and gentle music that made the park feel magical. In 2014, the old rides were finally retired, replaced by modern attractions, but nothing can truly replace the simple charm of those spinning, rattling rides that defined childhood afternoons for people all across Saskatchewan. Capital Sorus Park, long before modern museums and digital exhibits, Drumheller had a tiny outdoor attraction filled with huge imagination. Families wandered through prehistoric displays, stood beside giant dinosaur sculptures, and felt the thrill of being surrounded by ancient giants. It was simple. It was rough around the edges, but to kids growing up in the 70s and 80s, it felt like walking into a forgotten world. Over time, newer attractions replaced the old ones, and the original park quietly disappeared. But for many Albertans, those first dinosaur encounters will never be forgotten. Upper Clemens Park. In the Maritimes, summer had its own heartbeat, and it lived inside Upper Clemens Park. From the wooden roller coaster to the swinging ship, the cable cars, the Midway games, and the long wooden walkways under the hot Nova Scotia sun. This park was a tradition for countless families. You could smell the barbecue, hear the coaster clack, and feel the energy of a place built on joy. But after years of financial struggles, the park finally closed its gates in 2019. Today, the grounds sit empty, a quiet echo of summers that meant everything. Wildwater Kingdom. For decades, Wildwater Kingdom was Ontario's waterslide paradise. Kids waded barefoot on hot pavement, carrying tubes twice their size, ready to brave the massive slides that towered over the park. There were wave pools, lazy rivers, concerts, DJs, and long summer nights spent splashing until sunset. In 2016, the park closed for good, leaving behind rusting slides and silent pools. To anyone who grew up near Toronto, Wildwater Kingdom wasn't just a place, it was the soundtrack of summer. Crystal Palace Amusement Park. Atlantic Canada had something special inside the Crystal Palace shopping complex, a full indoor amusement park that lit up childhood winters. Bright colors, spinning rides, bumper cars, a carousel, fun houses, and the excitement of escaping the cold into a world of indoor magic. For nearly 25 years, families gathered there for birthdays, school trips, and Saturday afternoons they'll never forget. When the park closed in 2014, it felt like the end of an era for the entire region. Crystal Palace may be gone, but its memories still glow like neon in the minds of those who loved it. Granville Island Fun Zone. Back in the 80s and 90s, Granville Island wasn't just a marketplace. It was home to a tiny but unforgettable fun zone filled with kid-sized rides, arcade games, and the magical energy of Vancouver's waterfront. Families wandered between artisan shops and mini attractions, and children begged for just one more token. It wasn't a big theme park, but it had heart, color, and that West Coast charm that made every visit feel special. Today, the fun zone is long gone, leaving behind only memories of a simpler time on Granville Island. Magic Mountain. Before Magic Mountain became the modern water park we know today, it had an earlier era, a smaller, more intimate version with classic slides, retro attractions, and a layout that many Maritimers still remember fondly. Families spent hours in the old pools, waited in long lines for the original slides, and created the kind of summer memories that last a lifetime. As the years passed, the park was rebuilt and expanded, and many of those original attractions disappeared. The Magic Mountain of today is bigger, but the old one? That's the version people still talk about. Centerville Amusement Park. For generations, a ferry ride to Center Island meant one thing, Centerville. But the Centerville we remember from the 70s to the 90s looked very different from today. There were classic kiddie rides, retro spinning attractions, old-fashioned mini coasters, and charming Midway games that slowly disappeared over the decades. To anyone who grew up around Toronto, those old rides weren't just attractions. They were childhood. Today, many of them are gone, but their spirit still lives in every memory of summers spent on the islands. Storybook Gardens. Storybook Gardens has always been magical, but the original ride section from the 1960s to the 1980s had a charm that can never be recreated. There were fairy tale-themed rides, storybook houses, gentle spinning attractions, and whimsical sculptures that transported children straight into their favorite tales. As safety standards changed and the park evolved, many of these old rides were removed. But for anyone who grew up in London, the old Storybook Gardens was more than a park. It was part of childhood itself. Across Canada, these places weren't just attractions. They were chapters of our childhood, from theme parks built with heart to little roadside wonders that felt like magic. So many are gone now, but the memories still shine. If you ever rode these rides, walked these paths, or shared these moments with your family, you carry a piece of Canadian history with you. Thank you for watching Classical Canada. If you enjoyed this nostalgic journey, please leave a comment and share your memories. I always read each one. And we're so close to 1,000 subscribers. Your one click truly means the world to me. I'll see you in the next episode for another trip into the Canada we grew up with.